Here is the beautiful Zacian EX deck, and for this particular deck we use the Lilac colorway for the Endgame Omega sleeves. Now the Endgame Omega is my favorite sleeves to use, and one small disclaimer, this is a spread style of deck, so we're actually never going to be attacking with the Brave Slash attack, that big 240 1-hit KO style attack with this deck. But if you want to do so, you're going to want to check out the Mega Mawile version of the deck. I'll be producing some content on that later this week, and that deck uses the Metang engine, which is basically electric generator every single turn for your metal Pokemon. So if you like playing Miraidon EX and you want to give Zacian a try, this Mega Mawile EX deck with Zacian is really fun. I would highly recommend it. This deck is really fun to play, and there are so many different lines you can go for, so you're going to have the really big surprise element going up against any of your opponents. They're not going to really necessarily know exactly what game plan you have up your sleeve. Starting off with the Pokemon, we have our main attacker, Zacian EX. We have 230 HP, which is nice and chunky. We have the Insta Strike attack. For 1 colorless energy, you do 30 damage, and then you actually get to ping and hit your opponent's bench Pokemon for 30 as well. So 30 to the active, 30 to the bench. Now, 30 might not seem like a lot, but this attack does scale and can hit as high as 120 damage into the active. Now the other attack here, Brave Slash, it's for 3 metal and a colorless. You do 240 damage. It's a 1-hit KO option that we're not going to use in this deck, but do keep in mind if you do want to play the other version, which uses the metal energies in the list, the maximum damage output Brave Slash can do is not that 240 that you see on the card. It can actually hit as high as 330. This deck is going to really use this Insta Strike attack as much as possible to flood your opponent's side of the board with a bunch of damage, and instead of using something like Iron Hands EX to take bonus prizes off of a single price Pokemon or an extra one off of a 2-price Pokemon, Zacian EX is all about taking multiple knockouts in the same turn to try and basically board wipe your opponent and take a bunch of prizes. One thing to note is that this deck is weak to fire. Now fire notably has not been a popular archetype or a type in the Pokemon TCG for a little bit now, but with the rise of Mega Evolution cards coming out, the Surlage EX deck is actually quite scary, and we actually played against a Surlage EX deck, and it was really close and competitive, surprisingly, because they can typically just 1-hit KO your Zacian EX, so you have to get really creative when you're going up against weakness, and you have to go over some really cool Devo plays. Today's list that I'm sharing with you guys is the base list, and I've actually been cooking this deck more and more as I put hours and hours into it. So if you want to see how this deck gets upgraded and evolves over time, make sure you guys subscribe, because I'll probably post an updated list as a YouTube short or in another gameplay video on YouTube in about a week's time. The other nice thing this deck has going for it is resistant to grass, so you're not going to take as much damage from Pokemon like Teal Mask Ogerpon or Mega Venusaur. You don't take any damage at all from Maractus or Badu as well. 2 copies of our early game attacker, Zacian EX. Next up we have 2 Hops Snorlax. Hop Snorlax is very good because not only does it boost our attacks for all of our Hops Pokemon, including itself, by 30 with its extra helpings attack or ability, but you can actually swing for 210 damage maximum with Hop Snorlax. So you can knock out those big basic EX Pokemon. All you have to do is get 2 energies on this Pokemon and attach a Hops band, and you are off to the races. So Hop Snorlax has 150 HP. We have the ability Extra Helpings, which reads attacks used by your Hops Pokemon do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. The effect of Extra Helpings doesn't stack, so unfortunately you can't put 2 Hop Snorlax on your board and get extra damage, bonus damage from it, but you know, 1 is still really good, and by having just 1 out, it means your Zacian is now swinging for 60 instead of that 30. And we have the other attack here, Dynamic Press, which you do knock yourself out if you attack with it twice if you don't remove any damage from your Snorlax. For 3 colorless energies or 2 energies plus a Hops band, you do 140 damage, and again, this Extra Helpings ability automatically kicks in for this attack, so you're actually hitting for 170 at the minimum, and then if you get the Hops band, which you're most likely going to have to put on it, you're going to swing for 200, and then that only needs 2 energies as well. 200 damage from a 1-prize Pokemon is really good. The biggest drawback to Hop Snorlax is you're going to want to try and get a Latias EX on the board if you do have this guy out, because he has a pretty hefty retreat cost at 4, so do keep that in mind. Now there is some cool plays plays you can do with Hop Snorlax and Munkidori. One play that you can do involves some self-preservation, because of course Hop Snorlax can't attack twice unless you have something like a Bravery Charm on it, but that seems counterintuitive because you want to be able to attack for just 2 energies. So your Hop Snorlax hits them, you get hit for 80 to yourself, and then if your opponent hasn't knocked out your Hop Snorlax, then you can move that damage to your opponent with the Munkidori, and then attack again with the Snorlax and not get knocked out. So it's nice to have, you know, a support style of Pokemon, which is also a very valid mid to late game attacker. That's only a single price Pokemon that can knock out some larger guys. Hop's Cramorant is insane. It's not annoying, not as annoying, I should say, as the Spit Innocently one from the Lost Zone engine, but Hop's Cramorant has 110 HP, 1 energy, or just the attachment of a Hop's band. You do 120 damage, and again the scales plus 30 for each bonus damage modifier you have on the board, so you're going to hit for 150 for no energy if you have the tool on it. Now there is an effect here that you do have to keep in mind. It is if your opponent doesn't have exactly 3 or 4 prize cards remaining, this attack does nothing. So Hop's Cramorant does have a you know, a little negative trait to it, because it's just so kind of broken, being able to attack for next to or literally like nothing, and to still do a lot of damage with it. And now that I think about it, I think I told you guys Hop Snorlax maximum damage output is 210. I was wrong, it's 230. So it's 140 plus 30 makes it 170, plus another 30 makes it 200, plus another 30 makes it 230. So Hop Snorlax can actually swing for 230, but Hop's Cramorant the most it can swing for is 210. So all those numbers I mentioned earlier about 210, it applies to Cramorant. That means this Hop Snorlax can actually take down even bigger big basic Pokemon. Do keep in mind, even if we're short a little bit of damage, sometimes it's for the best to not take a knockout, because if we're able to send your opponent's Pokemon to the bench, you might be able to snipe it with the help of Hop Zacian EX or with the help of some Munkidori technology. So there's a lot of ways to put on a lot of damage on your opponent's side of the field without too much energy cost, and then you can selectively take knockouts when you want to avoid activating something like, let's say, Fezandipiti's EX Flip the Script ability. Now another option you might want to consider into the deck would be the Hops Wooloo and Hops Double. Basically, if you evolve your Hops Wooloo into the double, you get a Boss's Orders effect on evolution. So we decided to not go with those particular cards in this deck. However, just think about that on paper. If you have Ultra Balls in your list, it turns all of your Wooloos essentially into Boss's Orders if you evolve them with the help of an Ultra Ball. Next up, let's get to the evil Pokemon in this deck. Starting things off with Maractus. Maractus is a menace. Of course, anytime you can do retreat locking, it's always very good for any spread style of deck. So you can maintain or even set the pace of the game depending on how things go. 110 HP, Exploding Needles if this Pokemon gets knocked out by damage from an attack. Put 6 damage counters on your opponent's active Pokemon. So that can help set up some really good math down the road. And of course, we have 1 energy cost for the attack corner, where if you attack with this, your opponent can't retreat that Pokemon, and it does 20 damage as well. So over time, you can just slowly build up a bunch of damage on your opponent's side and then go in for the kill when you want to. And the retreat cost is 2, so do keep that in mind. The 2 retreat cost can just usually be ignored with the help of Latias EX on the board. Our next evil Pokemon are the Munkidoris. You know everything about Munkidori by now. It's the most popular card in the game. It sneaks its way into so many decks, and it snuck its way into Hop Zacian as well. So one really fun play I like to do with the Munkidoris is you can actually attach the Dark Energy and then use the ability Adrenabrain, and then you're going to use a card like Energy Switch to move that energy to your Hop Snorlax so it can attack, or your Zacian, the list goes on. So E-Switch, the Munkidoris, and the Dark Energies are really, really good. And there's also another stadium in this deck that just got added with the Mega Evolution base set, which make the Munkidoris even better, and this whole deck even better overall. So stay tuned for the stadiums, because the stadium is really, really good. Now in this deck, we're not playing any Dark Energy. However, I have been experimenting with a one-off copy of Psychic Energy as well, just so we can get that Munkidori attack in. That Mind Bend can also be very, very annoying for your opponent to deal with. Sometimes just stealing games you have no business stealing. You could call it monkey business. Let's get to more of our support Pokemon. We have Latias EX. Latias is very, very important to get that free retreat going. We always want to be going playing second with this deck. This is a go second deck, and you want to basically try and Nest Ball out your Latias if you need to retreat, and then go in with the Hop Zacian and slap him with the Insta Strike. All of the Pokemon in this deck are basic, so Skyliner is going to be an ability that is always active. Just be careful not to get retreat locked yourself. Bloodmoon Ursaluna EX is another goated card in this list. There's so many games that you just close out with your final attack being the Blood Moon with the Season Scale ability. You just need to attach an energy, or not even attach an energy at all, and you're going to get to do that massive 240 damage. And of course, if you are combining that 240 with something like some Munkidori damage that you put on the board earlier, or some chip damage you did with Zacian, that 240 is very, very meaningful. Then we got Fezandipiti EX, another staple for so many decks out there. We're going to want to be able to see 3 more cards every single time our Pokemon get knocked out, so Fez is good for that, of course. And then we have 1 copy of Iron Bundle. Iron Bundle is really, really good, especially if your opponent plays Badoo. If you just Nest Ball out your Iron Bundle, you can send their Badoo to the bench, and then your Zacian is going to be able to knock out or do a bunch of damage to the active, and then knock out the Badoo as well. So Iron Bundle is quite good. There's going to be quite a few times where you're actually going to want to use a Night Stretcher to just bring back the Iron Bundle and Gust again. 5 of them in this deck right now, and I actually play 6 in my my upgraded, or later version I'm going to show you guys eventually. So right now we have 4 copies of Hop's Choice Band. This card is insane. Like, if they printed this card for any other Pokemon, it would just be broken. But I'm so glad they have this for the Hops deck. It makes it way more competitive. Attacks used by Hops Pokemon with this card attached to it cost 1 colorless less and do 30 more damage. That is insane. So this is essentially like a Arven searchable energy equivalent card that is not only an energy but a damage bonus. So again, each damage modifier in this deck does 30 more additional damage. So Hop's Choice Band is a 30. We got Postwick, which is one of our stadiums, which is another 30, and of course Snorlax. So the most our Zacian can do is 120 to the active, 30 to the bench. The most our Snorlax can do is 230 to the active, and then Cramorant is the most it can do is 210. So 4 copies of Hop's Choice Band. We want to consistently see this card turn 1. You could potentially get a little risky and cut it down to 3, but you better have a really good reason for it. So the other tool we play in this deck is of course the Technical Machine Devolution, and this is a card that in my upgraded list for this deck I actually run 2 copies, because there's going to be games where if you have to if you prize it, or if you discard it, you lose that whole line of going for a board wipe with Devolution. So I think having 2 is really important. And of course, if you have 2 in your deck, maybe you're going to use something like an Earthen Vessel or a Secret Box, you can easily just discard the extra one knowing you have a second one in the tank. But yeah, Devolution is super important against a lot of those big stage 2 decks out there, of course with the Megas coming out, and stage 2s just being very relevant right now in the game. Being able to set up a ton of damage on the board with Munkidori, with Zacian, and then all you have to do is go for Arven TM Devo, and you can just board wipe them and pretty much win the game with like that kind of play. 2 copies of Postwick. Typically you would play more before, and this deck would actually play different stadiums as well, but 2 copies of Postwick is just really solid all around. You don't necessarily need to see it right away, but it is very helpful for that early game extra 30 damage and just bumping your opponent's stadiums. I really enjoy using my opponent's Artisan and then bumping it for Postwick. Another huge plus about Postwick is that it's one of those stadiums that your opponents just don't get to use. Now, the other stadium in this deck is really good. This is the new one from Mega Evolution, Risky Ruins. It says here, whenever any player puts a basic non-dark Pokemon onto their bench during your turn, place 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. So before we had another stadium, I think it was like Calamatis Wasteland, or it was like a snowy mountain kind of thing, where if you attached an energy, you would have to you would put energy, or you would put damage on your Pokemon. But Risky Ruins is really good because a lot of decks are going to play Nest Ball and Poffin and get those Pokemon onto their board and not from their hand. It's going to come from their deck. So the previous stadium did not allow those damage counters to go onto that Pokemon. So you guessed it, Risky Ruins does pair perfectly well with the Munkidori technology. You get instant damage that you can throw at your opponent with the help of a Nest Ball for Monkey, or any kind of way to just get Monkey onto the board. Risky Ruins means all of your opponent's Pokemon that come into play are most likely going going to take an additional 20 damage as well, which means your Munkidoris, your Zacian, all your work is going to have to, you know, need less work in general. Like, you're not going to have to work as hard to go for those big board wipes or just knock out smaller Pokemon. There's going to be times where your opponent has like a 50 or 70 HP Pokemon on their side. Just by benching that Pokemon, they take 20. You can Munkidori some damage over. That's another 20 to 30, you could say. And then your Hop Zacian EX can finish them off. The 2 copies of Risky Ruins, a really good stadium as well. Pretty much the only Pokemon that's relevant that doesn't get hit by this card is like Fezandipiti. That's the most common card to see. Next up for energy cards, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 basic dark energies. We only play the dark energies right now. That's just for our Munkidoris that are going to be able to Adrenabrain. And that also means our Ursalunas can also get these, our Cramorants can get these, all of our Pokemon can attack with the help of this dark energy. Again, you might want to throw in a psychic. I think I cut down on my dark to a psychic energy because we have Vessel in the deck anyways. 2 copies of Jet Energy. Jet Energy is very, very good because it allows your Snorlaxes to not be as much of a liability. You can already have an energy on your Snorlax already and the band, and then boom, Jet Energy brings in the Snorlax and goes in for the KO. Jet Energy is also really good at resetting Retreat Lock, and just having the extra mobility is very, very useful for any sort of deck, especially since we don't really need a specific type of energy to attack. 4 copies of Arven. Arven is the best supporter in the world for this deck in particular, because of course we're always going to be able to go for our Hop's Choice Band and an item. If we're under item lock, it does suck a little bit, but most of the times you just really want to get that first turn Arven, and that's going to set up the momentum for the game, and they usually won't be able to item lock you if you're able to knock out the Badoo on that first initial knockout. Typical for turn 1 grab will probably be something like a Secret Box, but of course if you want to get an attacker or a retreat option, this is basically a toolbox style of deck, so all the items are going to be able to unlock your full deck, and Arven will allow you to unlock your full deck. So 4 copies for maximum consistency. 2 copies of Iono. We really want to rely on that late game hand disruption as well. That late game hand disruption, Iono to 1, Iono to 2, is absolutely devastating. So yeah, 2 copies of Iono. And then the other supporter in our deck that you could switch out with the newest inclusion from Mega Evolution is the Lily's Determination. That's a shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 8 if you have 6 press cards, and if not, 6 cards you draw instead. Professor's Research was the go-to card before the Lily's Determination came out, so just for practice and consistency I was rocking the research, but I probably will cut these researches down to just 1 and put 2 Lilies in, or just go switch all of these researches out for Lily's Determination. It's so busted, and if we're able to see that turn 1 Secret Box, or just have a really big turn 1 going second, Lily's Determination is really, really useful, so we don't have to discard some of the good cards in our deck with Professor's Research instead. 3 copies of Boss's Orders. You know, just being able to gust exactly what you want and specifically send your opponent's Pokemon to the bench so you can hit it with a Hop Zacian Insta Strike for 30 is really, really good. So yeah, just being able to swing and hit what you want is essential for this deck. You could argue you might even want to put in a 4th copy, but I find 3 to be pretty good, especially since we have the Iron Bundle already. Iron Bundle is a gust that can be used multiple times in a game. Consistency cards first. We have 4 copies of Nest Ball. Of course we have 6 Hops Pokemon, but we have a lot of non-Hops Pokemon that are really beneficial to this deck, including Latias, including Munkidori, including Fezandipiti. So having additional outs to those, but also being able to grab Hops Pokemon with Nest Ball is very, very good for the deck. The other consistency item card in this deck that's really important on that turn 1 is the Hops Bag. Hops Bag is, if you've ever played with Battle VIP, it's Battle VIP but can be used on any single turn, and it can only be used for Hops Pokemon. So Hops Bag here reads search your deck for up to 2 basic Hops Pokemon and put them onto your bench. So just very, very useful for grabbing your Hop Zacian EX for that early game attack, or if you have that mid-game attack, you got the Hops Cramorant, and of course the go-to is typically you're going to grab a Zacian and you're going to grab a Hop Snorlax for that damage boost and just start swinging away. Now we are pretty low on energies in this deck. We have 5 Dark and 2 Jet, so there's going to be times where we want an energy for turn. We want to get an attachment for maybe a Munkidori or a Snorlax. You want to put your tools onto your Hops, so your Snorlax can get that earlier attachment instead. So we have 2 copies of Earthen Vessel. Basically, this is a way to get 2 energies from your deck with an Arven. They're energy search, but you just have to discard 1 card from your hand, which is pretty easy to do. They're also very helpful as well for trying to thin down our hand so we can get additional draw power out of our Mew EX's restart ability. 2 copies of Energy Switch, another goated card, one of my favorite cards in the trading card game. Energy Switch is just super versatile. It's basically an extra energy attachment on your turn, so your Hop Snorlax can pull off a sneak attack, which is really handy. You can also pull off some fun Munkidori shenanigans where you have a dark energy on your Munkidori, then you move it onto a different Munkidori, and then you got to use Regenerate Rain twice for just 1 Energy Switch. But yeah, Energy Switch is very versatile, and as the more you play this deck, you're going to learn all the different cool lines you can do with it. 3 copies of Night Stretcher. Night Stretcher is super important for this deck too, just because we can get any of our Pokemon or our dark energies back from the discard pile back into our hand. So if you had to discard a dark energy, we can get that back, or if we discarded one of our one-ofs like a Bloodmoon or a Fez, or even potentially like a Snorlax or a Munkidori, Night Stretcher just allows you to have flexibility in your discards and gives your deck extra power if you are turboing through it with something like a research, or if you had to make some tougher discards earlier in the game. Night Stretcher, being an Arven searchable card, means that you can get basically instant energy out of your discard pile or instant Pokemon out of your discard pile just with the Night Stretcher from an Arven. This card right here is so much fun. Team Rocket's Venture Bomb. Flip a coin. If heads, put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. If tails, put 2 damage counters on your active Pokemon. So this is a guaranteed 2 damage counters onto the field, which is fantastic if you're playing a deck with Munkidori. So this is just bonus damage. It's a win-win no matter what, and your opponent is not usually going to expect this card to get played. So if your opponent has a Pokemon that is just has like 10 HP, 20 HP remaining, you can even take a full prize card or 2 prize cards with the help of this Venture Bomb. 1 copy of Counter Catcher. Again, this is an Arven searchable card, so really good to have that instant gust on demand. Your opponent might not expect it either, since it's just a one-of copy and they're going to see you have a bunch of boss's orders. Counter Catcher can easily win you games, especially if you're behind. Say you have 2 prizes left, your opponent has 1 prize left. You can use Bloodmoon Ursaluna. You just like Nest Ball your Bloodmoon now, bring it into the active with either a Jet or a Latias retreat, and then your Counter Catcher will bring up their Fez or something else, and you close out the game for 240. It's also really good to swing into your opponent's Bloodmoon Ursaluna EX with the help of this Munkidori or Venture Bomb if they have that 260 unit in front of you. 2 copies of Pokégear. We really want to see that turn 1 Arven. Like, that turn 1 Arven means so much to this deck. You could potentially cut this as well if you want to put in like a Lily's Determination to have extra consistency that way. A spec for this deck is going to be Secret Box. So we of course have 2 great stadiums to choose from, so many great items as well, so many great tools as well, our choice bands and our Devolution, and of course you get to get a supporter as well, so you can grab your next turn Arven for the Devolution play on the next turn, or you can get boss's orders for the next turn, or Iono. The list goes on and on. The only other ace specs I would consider for this deck would be Prime Catcher, especially if you're going to be very aggressive with your turn 1 Arven. Say you already have a way to get Hop Zacian on the board and you just need your Arven to grab the band and a Prime Catcher, and you can swing into like maybe a really poor setup on your opponent's side, so you can really punish your opponent if they only get like 1 or 2 Pokemon on the board with a Prime Catcher. And then the other ace spec that I've also played with in the past, which is still pretty good, would have to be Unfair Stand. But I want to say, for that early game aggression and that early consistency, just being able to do what you want, Secret Box is really helpful. You can go ahead and screenshot this. I'll have it linked in the description down below as well. Thanks again to my sponsor Endgame. You guys can use code SneakerTalk to get a discount. Good luck with your games with Hop Zacian.